Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from a brewer that it has been quite a while, but we've reviewed several of their beers, and that is Other Half. The beer in question today is called Poetry Snaps. This is a rice lager. It clocks in at 4.5% ABV, and Other Half is based in Brooklyn, New York. Though it's worth noting that they do mention all of the brewing locations: Brooklyn, New York, Bloomfield, New York, and also Washington, D.C. So Lord only knows precisely where this one was done, but nonetheless, that's the setup for them. I did get this beer from Crash Shack. When I was looking for Japanese and Japanese style beers, I did find a lot of different rice lagers. I saw this one from Other Half, said, ooh, I've had a bunch of their other beers, let's try this out. So, label art on this one, it's exceedingly simple. It's just a plain white label with a very small, the camera probably won't even pick it up, kind of gold, shiny, fingers snapping. That's the entire logo on this beer. Not sure the significance of Poetry Snaps or how it relates to a rice lager. Nonetheless, that's what it's called. So today we're going to use our nice pub style glass. Since this is an adjunct lager, we don't need particularly specialized glassware. Certainly a Pilsner glass, almost any kind of glass would work. My Sam Adams all-purpose kind of tulips, a lot of different glassware, but we're using our pub glass today. So let's get this poured right there in the old glass. This is pouring essentially the exact color I would expect it to be. All right. And this is a pint can. It's forming a nice head, so I'm not going to go beyond that. But let's jump right in. Ooh, formed a nice, rich, thick, creamy head here. Let's give it a sniff, see what we can discern. Oh, wow, yeah. That smells really, really nice. So this is another one of these American craft rice lagers. Rice lagers, of course, being a very traditional style in Japan. But the ones that the American craft brewers do, they tend to have a slightly different aroma to them. And this, just like the Hanamachi, kind of has this underlying Pilsner-like aroma to it. So there's some underlying kind of fruity accents coming out, but there's also this kind of crusty, bread-like, crumb-like aroma coming off of it. Now this one also has some quite strong doughy aromas to it as well. So you kind of have this combination of really nice aromatics coming out of the glass. Yeah, but most strongly, it puts me in mind of a classic Pilsner. We're talking German Czech. Yeah, it smells really, really nice. I don't know if maybe they used like base underlying Pilsner malt or maybe some classic gold standard Maris odor, but it smells really, really nice, guys. Visually, yeah, I mean, it just is a lovely beer. Very, very nice pale yellow, which would be traditional on Japanese rice lager. And it's got very fast moving, very tiny, tiny, tiny effervescence coming up. So that did obviously help contribute to this lush, thick head. So it looks great. It smells great. Let's just jump right in and see exactly what this one's about. Take one. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is a very tasty beer. Very tasty, very refreshing, nice and crisp. So, the first thing I can say about this beer, body and mouthfeel wise, the body is definitely light, medium light. It's only 4.5%. It's sitting basically right where you would expect it. The mouthfeel actually has a little bit more resistance to it than I expected. Not in a bad way, it's actually quite nice. But texturally, it also feels quite silky smooth when you agitate around the palate. This one's very rich, very creamy as it moves around. And in terms of the flavor profile, it does have a lot that immediately put me straight in mind of, say, a German or Czech style Pilsner, yet again, but there's a definite difference in this one. And it's clearly coming from the rice. Now, rice in a rice beer can impart different aromas and flavor profiles. In this one, it's got almost this almost sake-like quality to it, or like say you had some mirin, some rice wine, something in there. So there's this slight suggestion of a sweetness without it being sweet, but there's this distinct like This is rice that had rice sugars that converted into alcohol. And it's got that distinct flavor. So this, as far as the myriad American craft rice lagers I've had of late, is the one that does actually put me most in mind of what a traditional Japanese rice lager tastes like. The aroma profile on this is a bit more pronounced and a lot more Pilsner forward in nature. And indeed, the flavor profile on first sip, that's what I immediately got was, ooh, here's another one that's really nice. It tastes a lot like a Pilsner. But then it opened up into these other undercurrents that I haven't had in too terribly many by the American craft brewers. So very, very nice, very refreshing. The other thing I can say about this is, aside from the nice bit of extra resistance this beer gives you, the mouthfeel, there is a distinct kind of dryness to it, which would be very prototypical in many Japanese rice lagers. So it's very, very nice. It's very crisp. It's very refreshing. This would be just one of those, I got in from doing some yard work. I want something to quench my thirst and I want it beer. This would be an easy decision to make if you had this in the fridge. So we're going to jump back again. We're going to let everything re-intensify, see if I missed anything. Then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. On first sip, this is a very, very well done rice lager. Take two. There's this rather citrusy burst up front, and there's a little bit of bitters, but it's very subtle on this one. It's not an astringently bitter beer at all, so it differs a lot compared to a classic German or Czech Pilsner in that respect. But another thing I'm getting out of this is a lot more of that kind of crusty accent. So the malt bill underneath it is putting me a lot more in line with the flavors that pop out on the back end of, say, a Goza or a Saison or a farmhouse ale, but no funk and no souring. It's very, very nice. It's a very crisp beer, but I didn't catch it on the first sip. On second sip, there is really quite a pronounced citrusy flavor that comes through. It's almost, you know, very lemon lime-like. And obviously they didn't add any of that in this beer, but it's very, very nice. This is extremely refreshing. In terms of the balance, I mean, a beer like this, it's just a relatively simple beer. You've got your, malts that went in plus the rice and the underlying yeast. There's no other weird additives. They didn't barrel age, add anything to it. So it's the balance of the simplicity of the ingredients. And whatever they chose is very, very well done. I'm particularly pleased with the volume of rice that they chose to do because it does have this noticeable fermented rice flavor that is distinct, that you only get from, rice sugars being fermented. And it counterbalances what would otherwise be almost tasting almost particularly just like a Pilsner. And yes, it shares commonalities, but this is its own thing, and the rice clearly is doing its part. Not only on the aroma profile, but also in the flavor profile. Excellent, excellent. So the balance, whatever they chose, great balance of malts, great balance of rice, and the yeast is doing its job. Maybe that helped add in some of these kind of doughy aromas. It's very, very nice. In terms of the finish, it's not super long. You wouldn't expect it to be. It's just a nice, light, crisp rice lager. I would say it's wholly average in that respect. Not, extremely long, not extremely short. It's just middle of the road, which, frankly, is a good thing. So yeah, this is a very, very well done beer. It's not exactly what I expected, but I'm very, very pleased with what Other Half did here. This is a really nice one, guys. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, count my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Other Half Brewing Company's Poetry Snaps, a rice lager, clocking in at 4.5% ABV. Other Half is based in Brooklyn, New York. Now, this is another one of these Japanese and Japanese-style beers that I did get from Craft Shack, though Other Half, they have beers all the time on Tavour as well, if you're only on Tavour and you've not set up a Craft Shack account yet. But I do still think it's well worth. I mean, nothing says you can't have an account with both. Tavour is maybe a bit more curated, but Craft Shack has a much broader selection, including spirits, to your door. So well worth checking out if you haven't yet done so. But back to the beer in question. Just a really, really excellent rice lager. There was a lot about this to like. It had so many of the classic common traits, and not just in general with a classical kind of traditional Japanese rice lager, but also the American craft interpretations. They do tend to have a lot more of a Pilsner aroma and Pilsner flavor on the profile, which is, one of the telltale giveaways. Yep, I'm drinking an American craft rice lager and not a Japanese rice lager. But obviously, it's just a slight deviation. This is not purporting to be Japanese rice lager. It's just a rice lager. So they do vary based in kind of how they present themselves. But I really, really enjoyed this beer. I mean, this is a style that I could go to anytime. They're just so crisp and light and refreshing, and very simple beer in its construction. And I think that's part of the reason that I like them so well. So we're going to jump straight to the scores in this. This was one of those beers that nearly swept it. Indeed, there's only one category that did not get a perfect score, and that is the finish. And there was nothing wrong with the finish at all. It was exactly as I expected. It was very just middle of the road. It wasn't super, super short. It wasn't super, super long. It was just average for the style, and I did give it an average score, so the finish gets a 5 out of 10, which does, of course, leave a perfect 10 out of 10 for the remaining 9 categories. That is aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling/intangible, my subjective thoughts category, and finally, example of style. So the total score for Other Half's Poetry Snaps is a 95 out of 100. Guys, just a fantastic, fantastic rice lager. This one actually, I was really, really impressed and kind of intrigued by this. Aside from other classic aromas that you get in rice lagers, it had this nice kind of doughy aroma too, which you don't often get, and it was really, really quite pleasant. A very, very well done beer. Had this nice kind of citrusy burst up front. I absolutely loved it. This was super crisp, very refreshing, an extremely well done example of a classic rice lager. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop whenever videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.